One idea that's been popular for many decades is the idea that medieval Europeans believed that the Earth was flat. The Earth was thought to be shaped like a disc or a platform, and if you walked too far in one direction, you would risk to fall off the edge of the world. It's also thought that it was first when brave adventurers challenged the ignorance of their time by sailing across the Atlantic that the fact of the sphericity of the Earth first became known. Columbus was even said to have been warned by his contemporaries not to sail too far west, and during his voyage his crew constantly tried to convince him to turn back, in fear of falling off the edge of the world. So did medieval Europeans really believe that the Earth was flat? The answer is gonna be no. The idea that the Earth is round and its relative size had been well established by Greek astronomers in the 4th century BC, and was pretty much common knowledge in both classical and medieval cosmology. The fact that medieval people knew and accepted that the Earth was round is confirmed over and over again in the writings of people like Thomas Aquinas, Roger Bacon, Albert Magnus, Dante, and many more, and there is no writer in the Middle Ages who denied that the Earth was round. As for Columbus, he never proved that the world was round, or even argued for it. The purpose with his voyage was to show that the distance between Spain and China was not as long as people earlier had thought, and that trading with China by sailing west was both shorter and more safer than trading with China by sailing around Africa. It's true that Columbus' expedition was opposed by many scholars of the time, but none of them denied that the Earth was round. What they did argue for was that the Earth was much larger in size than Columbus had thought, and that a voyage from Spain to China would take too long time to complete before the expedition's provision had run out. Therefore they argued that the expedition was a failed cause that would only result in the death of everyone involved. It's also true that Columbus' sailors tried to convince him to turn back to Spain on at least one occasion, but this was not for fear of falling off the edge of the world. According to Columbus' diary, the sailors had two complaints about the voyage. First, they expressed concern that the voyage was taking longer time than Columbus had promised. Second, they were afraid because the wind constantly seemed to blow from the east, which seemed to make the voyage back to Spain impossible. None of these complaints have anything to do with believing that the Earth is flat. So if no one in medieval Europe actually thought that the Earth was flat, where did this story originally come from? The story originates in the literature of 19th century anti-Christian scholars, claiming that the ancient Greeks and Romans had understood that the Earth was round, but that this knowledge was suppressed by medieval churchmen. The reason they did this was because they equated the flat Earth with willful ignorance, while an understanding of the spherical Earth was seen as a measure of modernity. Pro-Catholic scholars at the time responded by making the argument that medieval thinkers did know that the world was round, but critics dismissed such opinions as mere apologetics. The 19th century was also the time when the story that Columbus proved that the Earth was round first originated. In fact, this story was first introduced in a fictional biography of Columbus by the American author Washington Irving in the first half of the 19th century. So in conclusion is the idea that medieval Europeans thought that the Earth was flat just a false story that has nothing to do with medieval history. And judging by the presence of today's flat Earth internet conspiracies, I would not be that surprised if a larger percent of Europe's population believes this today than during the Middle Ages. And don't forget that if you like this video and want to see more videos like it, hit the like, share and subscribe buttons.